Hello everyone, welcome to the Self-Knowledge Lectures. Today we have our lecture number 30 of the phase A of the self-knowledge course that consists of 50 lectures, that have the purpose of providing you information and techniques to achieve self-knowledge. So today we have lecture number 30, and if you haven't seen the previous videos, the previous 29 phase A lectures, you can find them here on the page on Transcendental Knowledge here in Facebook. Or if you're watching this through our YouTube channel, you can also find all the previous lectures there in our in the playlist, in the phase A playlist in this YouTube channel. And actually the objective of this course is like to give us a guide so that we can awaken our consciousness. And that is why today we are going to see this interesting topic, where we are going to explain the method to awaken our consciousness. Allow me just 1 second. So I fix this here. And we are going to be starting. Well, the objective of today's lecture is first that we have clear how our consciousness is divided, which are those two kinds of consciousness that we have. Why we have two kinds of consciousness, as you can see here, the objective one and the subjective one. We are going to see today why is it called objective consciousness and why is it called subjective consciousness. We are going to see how can we awaken our objective consciousness and how can we free and awaken our subjective consciousness. So I think that the first thing that we should make clear is what is the objective and what is subjective. What is this? And let's start with today's lecture. If you have any question at any point, you can leave your questions there in the chat and I will be gladly solving any question that you have here in the live broadcast at the end of the explanation of this topic. And if you see the video or if you have a question after this live broadcast passed anyway, you can come and you can leave your questions there and I will be checking and solving all the questions that you have in relation to these topics. The purpose is that this information is clear enough, okay? So let's see what is subjective and what is the objective. We must say that the objective, or something that is objective, is something that pursues the purpose for which it was conceived, and actually all of us came to this existence, to this human experience, with a purpose. And the part of our consciousness that is objective is the one that will always seek to reach that purpose, the one who seeks for the real. It is also the one that recognizes that everyone in this world came with the same purpose, that in the end we are all one, and therefore we always tend to collaborate, or the objective part in us, it will always be glad to collaborate, and we'll be always be measuring the effects of our actions and how they will affect others, because what is objective is what has a conscious goal that takes into account everyone's point of view, which is always looking for the reality, not for the concept, okay? And is what is looking for the non-identification, to not lose itself into the identification with a situation, with a psychological defect, or with a single point of view. That is the objective, okay? Now, on the other hand, the subjective is everything that doesn't have a conscious objective, because the subjective always watches over its particular egoic interest, is always looking to for that my point of view is the only one that is taken into account that what is important or what is the truth is that what I believe. So it's like pigeonholed into a concept, my concept. So it takes into account only what is related to my inner world when I am identified with what I am feeling, with what I am thinking, with what I am desiring and doing. And as we know, is all the projections of our own ego. Okay, so it's like the unreal. And for that reason, what is subjective is all of that that doesn't have a conscious goal. Okay, unlike the objective, which will always seek to achieve the purpose of our existence, the subjective in us will always lead us to seek superficial objectives, not transcendental ones, such as, for example, dedicating our existence to making money, which is something like very subjective, because it doesn't matter how many money we have, we are going to die, if not tomorrow, in 20 or 40 years, and all of that is going to remain here, and we are going to pass to another existence without any consciousness, and we are going to have exhausted one opportunity to achieve self-realization without doing something like real transcendental, or achieving fame, the same prestige, achieving luxuries, amenities, a good reputation, having a good job. And we think that is an objective purpose for living, but it is because our consciousness is so asleep. And it's because that objective part in us that we all have is currently asleep. So for that reason, we cannot see beyond what is in front of our nose. We cannot see beyond the desires of our ego, the desire for fame, for material things, for the pleasures, of the flesh. Those are our objectives. Actually, it is because our objective part, the one that knows what is the purpose of our existence, the one that has a conscious goal, is asleep. Okay, and the subjective, which is the part of our consciousness that is trapped by the ego, will always act like this. We'll always seek for separation, for what is mine. The ego is based on that famous motto, divide and conquer. Those are capturing our essence. That is like what is subjective. And well, that allows us to understand that we all have two types of consciousness. So because we all came from the sacred absolute sun with 3% of awake consciousness, we all came with that, and with 97% of consciousness that comes innocently, and that is being trapped by the ego in this process of evolution and involution that we studied in the lecture number 8 of the phase A, remember? And we did so in order to carry out a learning process. In all of our egoic expressions, we have a percentage of trapped consciousness. In our expressions of anger, there are consciousness trapped. In our expressions of laziness, lust, or pride, of envy, etc., we have a percentage of our consciousness that must be rescued. Our 3% is free. It cannot be trapped by the ego, because it's the divine and self-conscious part in all of us. And it is in charge of helping to release the other 97% of consciousness that was trapped in the ego, so that we can learn, so that we can achieve wisdom. The 3% of our consciousness makes up our spirit. And it is, as I was saying, the divine part in each one of us. And since it is not conditioned by the ego, it is self-aware, it is objective, it is wisdom, it is light, it is love. While the 97% of our essence make up our soul. And it is all the essence and all the energy that is subjective. Since it is subjected, it is trapped and conditioned by the ego. So we could say that when we talk about subjective consciousness, So, like, to make it clear, we are talking about the 97% of our essence that is currently trapped in our ego and that is processed by virtue of its own conditioning. So this 97% of essence that forms our soul is completely polluted by all of our negative ways of being. And as we studied in the lecture number 11, where we were talking about how to fabricate soul and spirit, we saw that the soul is a set of faculties, powers, and virtues and forces that, being trapped by the ego, are now being processed according to the conditioning of the psychological aspect that has the consciousness trapped. For example, we have a physical strength, right? But our strength is currently trapped by our anger. And our anger uses our strength to harm others. Or, for example, our sexual potency, which is a force, which is also a virtue, is currently trapped by our lust. And our lust is using our sexual potency to satisfy its own desire, our carnal desires, and to degenerate us. And, well, as I was saying a moment ago, we can differentiate the objective from the subjective because the subjective will always watch over its particular interest for the satisfaction of its egoic desires. So when we are being driven by defects, any defects, for example, laziness, its only interest of laziness is doing nothing, or procrastinating, or entertaining ourselves, distracting ourselves, without caring if others are busy, doing alone what will be done faster and easier if we collaborate. And the same when we are being moved by jealousy, for example, or by envy or greed. Each defect will always watch over its particular interest to satisfy its own desire. And it happens that only with the death of the ego is the essence released. And the greater the amount of essence released, the greater the self-awareness. Okay? So if we want to really have consciousness, if we really want to awaken consciousness, we need to eliminate our psychological defects. We need to deny ourselves to the constant desires of our ego. We need to understand every one of the manifestations of our ego, be it as laziness, be it as jealousy, be it as greed, our sadness, our as envy, our pride, anger, impatience, whatever. We need to be in self-observation, discovering all those psychological defects that we have that are the ones that have trapped 97% of our essence, and we need to be eliminating them so we can release all that essence and we can become self-aware every time more and more. Every time that we let our psychological defects manifest in us and we don't exercise the psychological death, that is the self-observation and asking our Divine Mother to eliminate every psychological defect that we get to discover in ourselves. What the defects do when we don't practice the psychological death is that they feed on our energy. And because they are manifesting in the different centers of our human machine, they manifest in our mind to feed on our mental energy. So when you have this worry there and you are thinking and overthinking about that, there is a psychological defect of worry that is feeding on your energy. When you have that resentment there in your emotional center and you're feeling that hard emotion and you don't let it go, right? And you don't eliminate it, because you can let it go, yeah. But what happens is that you are not doing a conscious elimination. So it is going to return any other time. But if you observe it, if you comprehend what is going on inside of you, and you eliminate it, you are releasing your energy. But if you let that resentment sink there, it is feeding on our energy. And when a psychological defects feed on our energy, then it grows more and more. And the greater, the bigger the psychological defects, it will have a greater capacity to submit us. If we let anger manifest frequently, we become more and more violent people. If we live lust, for example, manifest in us frequently, each time we become more lustful people, more perverse, Or if we live sadness, depression, anxiety, manifest, frequently in us, each time it becomes like more difficult for us to get out of those states of depressions, of anxiety, of sadness, or of any vice of the same. Any time that we give in to satisfy the desire of the ego, any vice, we are submitting ourselves more and more, because every time that it comes and feed on our energy, it becomes like bigger and stronger. And it is for this reason that we must constantly be in self-observation and practicing the psychological death to eliminate our psychological defects and thus rescue the trapped consciousness, all of that subjective consciousness. Because with the death of the ego, the essence is released. Now, as we saw, the other part of our consciousness is the 3% of consciousness that we all have, and is the objective one. The 3% came to raise consciousness. It is at all interested in whether we have a house or a car or money or material goods at all. The 3% of our essence, which is a divine part in us, is interested in rescuing the 97% of consciousness that is trapped in the ego, rescuing all the wisdom that all that essence acquired during all the time that it was conditioned in the ego, and recovering all those faculties, virtues, strength, forces, and all those capacities, that are our soul. And, in all that wisdom about good and evil that will allow us to handle that consciousness those faculties in a conscious way. We all have within us that divine spark, that 3% of consciousness that knows the path to self-realization. And that is the one that is going to guide us through this path towards self-knowledge. Because remember that here you are just receiving like a simple guide to help you to learn to look into yourself for the wisdom that you are looking for. All the wisdom is inside of you. Inside of you is that master that you have been looking for all the time, is inside of you. And is the one that knows your inner particular path. Because you did a whole travel to get to this point. And now you need to let me find the words in English. You need to undo this path. You need to unwalk this path. You need to go back, but now with wisdom. And the only one that knows that precise path and all the psychological defects that you have created and all the crises that you are going to pass to get to know yourself. And the only one who knows yourself, is your inner being. So inside of you is that master, and it is that 3% of consciousness. But what happens that unfortunately in us, human beings, that 3% is asleep. It is not trapped in the ego because it cannot be, but it is asleep because of the fascination that we have with the personality, with this third dimension, with the material things, and with everything that this world have or offers us. This is Maya, and Maya is illusion. That is this third dimension, and we we fell into the illusion of the personality, of the material world, of the getting money, of being famous, or having prestige or good reputation, or having a good family, and we thought that that was the important thing, and it's not. That is the reason why our inner God is asleep, because we were fascinated with this. Okay, and we need to know that when we were babies, that 3% of consciousness was awake, and it is that 3% that gives the babies that like shine and that natural beauty that they have in their small faces, that purity and love and light that you can perceive in a newborn. When babies are just born, they have actually many faculties. They perceive the physical parts, and they can perceive other dimensions. They can even remember their past lives. Some maintain that faculty for a long time. There are kids that have 2 3 years. For example, I have a daughter that when she was 2, she was able to talk a lot, and she used to told me a lot of things about her past life, and I was like, wow. And yeah, that is why, and it is because small children can remember their past life, and the newborns, they manage telepathy, and that is why a newborn doesn't have to tell the mother that he's hungry, but with telepathy he makes her feel and he makes her know. Like when the baby cries, and the mother usually knows if he's crying because he's hungry or because the diaper is dirty. And we usually think that that is a gift from the mother, when in reality it is a gift from the baby. The baby is letting her know when he cries, because he's telepathically making her feel what is his need. And actually, they see adults, and they see them as they really are. They can get to see our psychological defects, our perversity, our intentions. And that is why there are babies who cry like inexplicably in the presence of certain people. And it's because they can see more than what we can see. Babies can also see their own psychological defects, because remember that we all like bring our ego from existence after existence, and all those psychological defects that they have formed from past existences, they cannot enter the baby, because the baby has not yet created the personality, and the defects needs a personality to manifest in us. And what they do is that they are all the time lurking around the cradle, wanting to enter the baby, but these defects cannot enter. And so most of the times, as these defects are very ugly, because they are, the baby can see them and they cry, sometimes uncontrollably, inexplicably, in the presence of those ghosts or monsters. And they are their own psychological defects that are there, like waiting for the moment to enter the baby. And when they start growing up and forming a new personality, a way of being, the defects start entering in the human machine. And what is the personality? The personality is that, a way of being, the way of being that we create in every existence. In each existence, we have a different personality. We create a new one with each physical body, let's say. And the personality is like an energetic vehicle. Personality is formed through imitation from 0 to 7 years old. The child's personality is formed according to the country or the region in which he is born, according to the customs of the place, and according to what he sees that other people do. As the personality is formed, it's been formed, the defects enters the child little by little. For example, the little boy sees, let's say, someone hitting another. For example, his father is mistreating his mother and is mistreating him. And what the child begins to learn or to imitate that. That he's seeing in his father. He starts to make that concept that hurting other is okay, and is making this part of of his personality, and thus the defects of anger that he already brought from past existences start entering and start manifesting in the child, and he start fighting with his cousins or with his friends. And when he grows, the anger will have that personality dominated, making him a violent person. There you can see like an example. The personality is fascinated with the different things that we find in this physical world. And when the personality is formed, it slips the 3% of consciousness that was awake. When we are fascinated with school, with friends, with money, with movies, with the girlfriend, with a fornication, the 3% of consciousness fall asleep. The personality begins like silencing that inner yearning that drives us all the time to seek for something superior. For example, there are people who bring faculties from past lives, like clairvoyance, like ability to remember their past lives, like intuition, like ability to consciously unfold to the astral, etc. But when they fall, for example, into masturbation, into pornography, and when they start spilling their sexual energy, they start to lose those faculties that were their faculties of consciousness, and they continue creating more and more defects, and their 3% fall asleep. So we see that personality is just like a vehicle for the expression of our different psychological defects, but we must know that there is no future for the personality. The personality dies with time, but consciousness never dies because consciousness is eternal. We will see that with the death of the physical body, or with the physical death, let's say, 3 things die. One is the physical body, right? And we will see that moment, at the moment of physical death, we all realize that it was of no use having dedicated our lives to creating fortune, to fixing our physical body so much, if in the end we are not taking anything with us. All of that is going to remain there in the coffin, and it's going to be eaten by worms. And well, the first thing that die with the physical death is the physical body. The second thing is the organic or vital fund, which is like our vital body, which is that energetic part of our body, and it disintegrates as the physical body disintegrates. And the third thing that dies in the physical death is the personality, that facade that we make every existence. Although this may take a little longer to disintegrate, since when someone was very attached to life, that energy vehicle may remain like a ghost, wandering around for a while, being fed by the energy of those who remember him or who cry for him. For example, the personality of someone that was really famous can remain for years like a ghost. They're feeding on the energy of everybody that is talking about that person all the time and crying for that person, remembering that person. It is like a ghost feeding on that energy, but it has no reality. It has not a consciousness. It has not fire within him, because it's just that. It's just an energetic vehicle that has a name, that has a surname, that has concepts and stuff, but it's not real. It's not what we really are. It's just that, a personality. And none of these three things are consciousness. Since consciousness, what we really are, passes to the 5th dimension when the physical body dies, to live the entire process of judgments that we learned in lecture number 2, and to wait for a new physical body if it has not exhausted yet its 108 opportunities in that cycle. But the ego, each one of our psychological defects, doesn't die with the death of the physical body either, since they have trapped within themselves as an immortal essence that allows them to transcend the death of the physical body. So the ego will only die when we voluntarily decide to eliminate it by practicing the psychological death, or if we don't do so, they will be eliminated in the involution process, that is the passage through the infradimensions that occurs once we exhaust our 108 opportunities with human physical body in any of our 3,000 cycles, without doing the work of liberating and awakening the consciousness. And in the infradimensions, the ego will be painfully disintegrated in a process that can take thousands of years to release again the essence that will emerge, but innocent, without any wisdom from that process, to be connected again to the will to live another cycle, to develop another soul. But as long as we have not exhausted those 108 opportunities, by law of return, we must come and take a new physical body. And although it is unfortunate when returning to a new physical body and developing a new personality, the ego is reincorporated in the new physical body. So we bring this baggage with us. And with the same process is repeated existence after existence. So everything that we have seen so far allow us to observe that we must do two different works. One work is to awaken the 3% of objective consciousness, and the second work will be to release and to awaken the 97% of subjective consciousness. So how are we going to do this first work? How are we going to awaken the 3% of consciousness, which is like the one that is going to help us to release the 97, right? Well, the first thing that we have to do to awaken the 3% is start working with the 3 factors for the consciousness revolution. We learned about the 3 factors in the lecture number 17 of the phase A. That is the 3 factors for the consciousness revolution. That is the name of that lecture. But well, the 3 factors are to die, or the psychological death, to be born, or to practice the spiritual birth, and to sacrifice for humanity. And well, to die, or the psychological death, is when we begin to make the effort to self-observe ourselves, from moment to moment, to remain vigilant. So we recognize our psychological defects that are manifested in us, in our mind, emotion, in our sex, in our words, in our actions, in the desires that we feel from moment to moment, that we get to judge them and understand that they are defects, and we ask for their elimination of each one of them. Then that power of our consciousness, that is our Divine Mother, makes her part and eliminates all those psychological defects, and this power of our consciousness begin to awaken. It is the ability to freeing us from all the ego. So you can see that, you are going to see that this 3% awaken when we start using it. When we start making ourselves aware that we have those abilities inside of us, and we start using those powers, because when you start eliminating self-observing, which is a power of your 3%, when you start judging yourself, which is a power of your 3%, and when you start asking for death for your psychological defect, which is an ability of your 3%, then a force of your 3% start awakening. And with the second factor, which is the spiritual birth, when we begin to understand the value of our sexual energy, and we stop spilling our sexual energy with masturbation and fornication, and we start to make that energy ascend through our spine with the practice of the suprasexuality. Actually, all those powers and faculties that demonize us begin to awaken in us. Our spine is the stairway to heaven, and our 3% awakens and begins to direct all of our energy and the essences that we are releasing with the psychological death. So that is essence is start being awakened in the superior dimension. So there another portion of our 3% is awakened in that process of the spiritual birth. And another portion of our 3% is awakened when we start practicing the sacrifice for humanity. When we start giving this knowledge to awaken to all the brothers of humanity. And well, there you find the 3 parts of our 3%, because it's 3%, right? One is the Son, one is the Holy Spirit, and one is the Father. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. There you have the 3%. The force of the Father is the one that awakens with the sacrifice for humanity, because the force of the Father is the wisdom, is the force of the giving knowledge, and is giving wisdom to us. And we receive from what we give. When we give knowledge, we receive knowledge. And that is the force of our Father, giving us knowledge and giving knowledge to others, giving wisdom to others and to ourselves. So this awakened with the sacrifice of humanity. The power or the percent of the Holy Spirit is in our creative sexual energy, awakens with the practice of the suprasexuality, and the force of the Son, and the Son is the justice, is the balance, awakens with the psychological death. So there you have. And well, there is a second thing that we must do to awaken the 3%, and it is to start getting out of the fascination in which our personality put us with the things of the world. We need for this to work in all of those concepts that keep us entangled in the things of the personality, that keep us giving all of our time and all of our energy to pursuing subjective things, you know? And when we do so, when we start getting, giving less power, importance, energy, and time to the things of the personality, then we can start achieving the third work to awaken the 3%, which is to transfer our center of gravity that is currently only revolving around the things of the personality. We are going to move it to consciousness. So we are going to start carrying out the knowledge practices, because now we have time, we have energy, we have will to start looking for the objective things, and we are going to have time or make time for meditation, for astral projection, for practicing the watch and pray that we learned in the lecture number 21, to practice the negotiation of karmas that we learned in the lecture 13, to practice the suprasexuality also, to share this knowledge with everyone else. There we are going to be putting this 3% into action, and it is going to start awakening. And how will we know that our 3% have already woken up? Well, we are going to know because we will have the courage and the ability to be in self-observation most of our day, because we will easily recognize how the practice of the 3 factors is guiding us towards that return to our being. And we are going to know that the 3% is awakened, because we will start having a fervent desire to work on ourselves, to get to know ourselves, and the things of the world and the things of the personality will start losing value to us, and we we'll start like passing to a second level, and we are going like to focus ourselves in getting to know ourselves. Okay, and well, that is like the first work, to awaken the 3%, and the second one will be to free and to awaken the 97% of subconsciousness, because this 97 is trapped in the ego. And we will achieve this by dying in ourselves. That is by practicing the psychological death. So we must remember that the greater number of disintegrated defects, the greater the self-consciousness. So the first thing that we must do is keep ourselves at all times in a state of self-observation, directing our attention towards our inner world in order to discover, the manifestation of the different psychological defects that are all the time merging to manifest in the different centers of our human machine. After we get to observe any psychological defect, I am thinking right now, but who is thinking there? I'm thinking on something that someone told me about someone else. Then there is a gossipy defect. Okay, I already saw it. I could see how it was taking me out of the here and now, how it was taking me away, to distracting me. So it is coming to feed on my energy, to let me fall into the mistake of criticizing others, of judging others, of mocking others, etc. Okay, I already saw that. And the second step is the prosecution, okay, which is judge that manifestation, to understand that it is the ego manifesting, that is not my consciousness, and that actually my consciousness is trapped there, and I can understand how it is affecting me, how it is not letting me awaken, And well, the third thing will be to eliminate it, and we are going to do so by begging our particular divine mother, who is, that part of our 3%, which is the part of the sun. Yeah, the divine mother is a part of the sun, to disintegrate that negative way of being that we discover within us. And that's simple. You observe a defect by practicing the self-observation. You prosecute it until you know, yes, it is a defect. It is wasting my energy. It is making me commit a mistake. It is taking me out of the here and now. I already know it is a defect. Divine Mother, eliminate it. And return to your concentration, to the self-observation, to get to discover another manifestation of your ego. The greater the amount of psychological defects that are disintegrated, the greater your self-awareness of your self-consciousness. When you start doing this practice, you are going to be observing the changes within you. You're going to be observing how you are going to bring the light to your interior. You are going to be able to see more psychological defects, because now, at this point, our self-observation sense is stunted by lack of use. We can see maybe 1, 2, 3 defects in a whole day in this moment. But when we start using it, we are going to be able to make ourselves aware of all the darkness that is actually inside of us. We are going to start judging ourselves ruthlessly. We are going to be eliminating all those psychological defects, and we are going to be experiencing more light. But this light is going to be like, imagine that you are in a dark place. You have no light there, but now you have a small light. Actually, that light is giving you light. That light at the same time is allowing you to see how big is that place and how great is the darkness there. So you are going to be making yourself aware, as you do this work, of all the work that is undone, that all the amount of consciousness that you need to free, that is a great work, the one that you need to do. But as you do it, you will continue rescuing light and light and light until you are going to reach a point in which you are going to bring light to all that place that is your inner world. And at that point, you are going to be able to get to really know yourself. Beside all of that darkness, you are going to really see yourself as you are. You are going to be able to recognize your own inner being. And that is the purpose of this course. That is the purpose of this information, that you start doing this work and that you get to know yourself, and that 3% of consciousness gradually increase until it becomes 100% objective consciousness, 100% awakened consciousness. That is like the purpose, okay? And well, this has been today's topic. And as I was saying, if at any point you have any question, remember to leave your questions there.